just a no name. I hail from Indianapolis. Mama worked in Georgia because of the racist capitalist. Forces to the east, I dressing with the bacon bits. Syrup sandwich Monday, sloppy Joe Tuesday, Wednesday another hamburger helper dish. I can't wait for Friday so I can get some fried fish.
All right, here we go. Listen to what Dr. Boyce Watkins says about black wealth.
You know, maybe we should do like a black wealth detox. What do y'all think about that? I think that would be fun, a black wealth detox, because really, when I look at the culture, and I was talking about this week, I did a 4-hour training this week in Seattle. My new book is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. And during this training, I kept talking about culture. When I wrote this book, I said, I realized writing this book that the number one problem with black wealth is not access to money. We have 1.6 trillion. Black people actually have more income than 95% of all countries. Did y'all know that? How many of y'all knew that black people have more income than 95% of all countries? So stop saying you ain't got no money, because you got more money than 95% of all countries.
Or incorrect thinking that Dr. Boyce Watkins wants us to engage in. And I'm going to use business since he is a finance PhD. And then I'm going to connect this business idea to our personal finances. So here we go. Revenue versus profit. And the reason I'm doing this is because he's saying that black people have high levels of income, higher than 95% of all countries. That's what he said. And the reason why we have low levels of wealth is because of our culture. All right, so let's look at this. Revenue is the total amount of income generated by the sale of goods or services related to the company's primary operations. Profit, which is typically called net profit or the bottom line, is the total amount of income that remains after accounting for all expenses, debts, additional income streams, and operating costs. Key takeaways. Revenue is the total amount of income generated by the sale of goods or services related to the company's primary operations. Revenue, also known simply as sales, does not deduct any costs or expenses associated with operating the business. Profit is the amount of income that remains after accounting for all expenses, debts, additional income streams, and operating costs. Now, this last point I'm going to read is the fallacy that he wants us to believe is true. While revenue and profit both refer to money a company earns, it's possible for a company to generate revenue but have a net loss. All right, so the reason I did that is you as an individual could have whatever income that you got, right? Your income, it will be revenue for a company. Okay. Now you can have income at whatever levels, but this income or revenue does not account for the expenses and liabilities you may have. Because it says it's possible for a company to generate revenue by having net loss. So it's possible for you to have income, but then have a net loss. And let me show you that. We're going to look at wealth levels in the United States. We're going to look at the color of wealth. So let's look at this, how to calculate your net worth or your wealth. Your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. It's what you have left over after you pay all your liabilities. Net worth is a better measure of someone's financial stability than income alone. And he's a finance PhD, so you best believe he knows this. This is simple. He knows this. But the reason he's selling us this is because he needs you to think that something's wrong with black people's culture, and he's going to tell us how to fix it. All right. So remember, your net worth is your total assets minus liabilities. It's what you have left over after you pay all your liabilities. That's a better measure of someone's financial stability. All right. Here we go. Let's look at the color of wealth report. All right. The Samuels Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke University. A series of reports that examines the social and economic conditions of people of color among 6 metropolitan areas in the United States. Let's look at Baltimore. All right, let's read this one. Our study finds that in vivo transfers for white households, that's transfers that are made while people are still alive, are more than double those of black households, which is 17%. That means whites who are still alive are transferring wealth more often than black folks. It is interesting to note that our sample yields the same results for white households and with no incarceration exposure. Additionally, over 42% of white households with no incarceration exposure report having received an inheritance or gift, compared to about 25% of black households with no incarceration. See, no incarceration, and whites still are able to transfer wealth amongst each other while still alive. So we're not talking about, when somebody dies and they inherit something. In vivo is while you're still alive. All right. When exposed to incarceration, the numbers for white and black families are 31% and 19%. So even when incarceration is figured into whites and blacks, whites still are able to pass on wealth at a greater rate than blacks. All right. All right. The results show substantial and statistically significant white-black racial earnings, households income, and net worth gaps of $29,000, $43,000, and $187,000 respectively. Whilst white households have higher average earnings, household income, and wealth of $61,000, $76,000, and $217,000 respectively. In Baltimore, the median net worth for black households is 0, whereas for white households is $59,000. When comparing white and black households without incarceration exposure, we find substantial and statistically significant gaps in earnings, household income, and wealth of $34,000, $56,000, and $265,000 respectively. So again, that's Baltimore, right? Where we see the median net worth for black household is a 0, while for whites, it was $59,000. That's a significant difference. Let's look at a different city. Let's look at Miami. All right, key findings. Median wealth for white households in Miami was estimated at $107,000. In contrast, Puerto Rican households had negative median wealth, negative $3,940. South Americans and U.S. blacks had a fraction of the wealth of white households at $1,200 and $3,700 respectively. All right, you see this difference in Miami? Net worth of $107,000 for U.S. blacks had a fraction of the wealth of white households at $1,200 and $3,700 respectively. The median value of liquid assets for U.S. blacks and Puerto Ricans was only $11 and $200 respectively. The median value of liquid assets among Caribbean and South Americans was around $2,000. For Cubans, it was $3,200. Other Latinx households had liquid assets of $5,000. So these are people coming into the country, immigrants, right? They have more wealth than native U.S. blacks and Puerto Ricans, who had $11 and $200. Blacks had the $11, Puerto Ricans had the $200. That's liquid money, cash on hand. This is Miami, because the income is like the revenue of a company. We haven't figured in all the expenses and liabilities yet. So this is why we need other people in our community pointing these things out. It's not to bash Dr. Boyce Watkins. It's to highlight the fallacies in our thinking, because these fallacies will impact what we advocate for. Because he's advocating for us to change our behavior. And then once we change our behavior, we will still see that we don't have the wealth that we need to function in this society. Because a lot of this is driven by laws and policies. But if you say it's culture, then we will create solutions to fix the cultural problem. But this is not the issue. We're showing you that the issue has nothing to do with culture. It has everything to do with policies and laws. Here we go again. He is a PhD in finance, and he's telling us that the wealth levels of black people is connected to their cultural behavior. So this would mean then, if all black people did all the things that Dr. Boyce Watkins suggested, our wealth levels would be higher. So that means if black people raise their kids right, they have a job, they go to college, they don't have a criminal record, they're a good citizen, then their wealth levels should be higher. So we can see if that's true. But I have yet to see any statistic that suggests education level, income levels, jobs, caring about education. None of this seems to increase the levels of wealth in the black community. We've yet to see any individual behavior result in higher levels of wealth, because wealth is not built by going to school and getting degrees. It's not built by having a job and saving your money. It's not built by investing, whatever you have left over. And we should not be comparing the income of citizens in a country to how much another country produces. Because the black citizens in this country, unlike a country, has no political power that gives them control over resources and systems and control and regulation over those systems. See, a country, like if we look at Nigeria or whatever country you want to look at, that country is running that country. The citizens are following, the rules, laws, regulations, and policies of the country. So the idea that we could point to blacks in America and say, hey, if we look at the total aggregate of all black people's income, we see that it's more than what this country is producing. Therefore, blacks culturally are doing something wrong, because how can they collectively have all of this income but not outproduce and have more wealth levels than the people in their country? Well, have you factored in, yes, our incomes are high, but how much are we paying out to live here? And we can see that we're paying out a lot, because most black people don't have high levels of wealth, which is your net worth after we subtract all of your expenses and liabilities. We see black people have very low levels of wealth. So yes, income may be high, but when you subtract all the things we owe, we don't have much. And nor do we have political control over the systems and structures and policies and laws of the country like another country would. Whatever country Dr. Boyce Watkins points to will have control over natural resources, will have control over the policies and laws of the country. The citizens do not have that same control, but the actual country does. The governments of those countries do, but not the citizens. So it's incorrect to look at the incomes of citizens in the country and compare that to the actual, GDP or what the other country produces, and then extrapolate that it's something wrong with the citizens because the citizens, specifically blacks, don't have higher levels of wealth. Like, that's silly. It's not how we should be looking at things. But that's just my thought. I could be wrong. Maybe we should be comparing citizens to actual countries.